Hello and welcome to Big Picture. I'm Vishal Dahiya, and today we're going to talk about China's untenable claims regarding the LAC, wherein India has very clearly asserted that it has never accepted the so-called unilaterally defined 1959 LAC, which China is referring to now. We'll try and understand why is China shifting goals time and again, and why bring this, untenable claim right now. For more on this, we are joined by a distinguished panel of guests. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with the former Ambassador Yogesh Gupta, who's with us. We also have Mr. Alok Bansal, Director of India Foundation, and we're also joined by retired Lieutenant General Syed Hasnain, the defense expert. Welcome, all of you gentlemen, to Rajya Sabha TV. Let me begin with you, Mr. Bansal, and let's start by trying to understand this entire, controversy which has been generated by China, shifting, goalposts and making these untenable claims about 1959 line of actual control, LAC.
See, as far as China is concerned, China has been shifting goalposts right through. If you look at it into this particular context and this conflict right from beginning, if you remember, Chow Yun-lai had initially said that these were old maps. Then they talked of accepting McDonald-McCartney line, which actually gave them Aksai Chin Road, but left the rest of Eastern Ladakh with us. And then now they're talking about 1959. The fact is, after 1962, especially from 1993 onwards, they have been aware of our perception of line of actual control. And we have been asking them repeatedly of what is their perception of line of actual control, which they have been extremely reluctant to give it to us. And having done that, now they have taken out this, again, bolt from the blue, going back to 59 and claiming the 59 line of actual control, which India has never accepted, which they have never held in recent past, in fact, last few decades. So our position, our line of actual control is well inside their 1959 claim line. And I think this seems to be their maximalist position. So if they are going to have this sort of an attitude, to my mind, it looks very difficult to come to a negotiated settlement, because after foreign ministers' meetings, it seemed as if both the countries wanted to avoid war, we wanted to negotiate, and because conflict at this stage is not in anybody's interest. And I think that's what we felt was happening. But now again, this sort of an assertion shows some amount of hardening of stance on their part.
Okay. We'll come to that part as well, as to what exactly do they, want to achieve by making these untenable claims. Let me bring in Ambassador Gupta here as well. Ambassador Gupta, in your viewpoint, if you look at the entire, the issue of line of actual control and the way they're referring to 1959 status, something which India has time and again very clearly pointed out to everyone, including the Chinese, that it is not acceptable to us.
So as Mr. Bansal just said, for China, this has been a political construct. Where the LAC actually runs, and it has varied over the years depending upon how strong China was, and depending on what was India's position. And this the perception of the LAC has continuously kept on changing. And the Chinese seem to think that they are in a much stronger position because they are a much bigger economy. They think that they have been able to control this COVID pandemic much faster than us. And India is still tied up in controlling this pandemic, and our economy is small. So they think that they are in a much stronger position, and therefore they are taking more of a harder line, more of a maximalist position. But as the Ministry of External Affairs spokesman has clarified, we never accepted the 1959 line earlier, nor have we accepted now. There are these three well-defined agreements to which both sides are a party. And the whole purpose of these agreements was to sort of narrow down on our perceptions on where the LAC actually runs. So we have never accepted the LAC as per 1959 agreement earlier, and nor shall we accept now.
Okay. General Ata Hasnain, what's the real ground situation in your point of view as far as the LAC is concerned? Our view is very well known. China seemingly, as both our panelists are also pointing out, keep on changing its statements or its goalposts, something which it is very notorious for.
See, Vishal, the thing is, the Chinese are obviously trying to establish a new narrative. They could have very well stated this issue in the month of March or April and said, okay, this is our perception that we want to go by the 1959 perception of the line of actual control. You don't start speaking about this after bringing 45,000 troops into Ladakh and at different friction points and trying to coerce us and pressurize us. We also have brought 40,000 troops back there. So obviously there is a stalemate there. And at this particular time, China is not in a position to actually press militarily in any way. They will have to bring a much, much larger force to do anything. What they're looking for primarily, the earlier assessment was that this will last till November and they will withdraw. Obviously, this is not going to happen that way because the geopolitical situation of the world is such that it will pan out into winter and it will go to April, May next year. And obviously, the Chinese are looking for ways of how to extend this whole standoff. And I think one of the ways they have found is by trying to bring about this preposterous kind of a claim on the 1959 perception of the LAC, knowing fully well this is just not acceptable to India.
Okay. But if we look at, as the External Affairs Ministry spokesperson also pointed out that, even if at all for a moment, if we accept what China is saying in terms of the LAC 1950 as per the 1959 claims made by them, which is obviously up to patrolling point 14, then it clearly once again establishes that during the Galwan Valley clash, they were the ones who crossed over.
That is quite obvious. You see, right from 1993, we have been talking about taking the initiative to demarcate or at least come to some kind of an agreement on a working line of actual control on map and on ground. But the Chinese have desisted from it because they know that keeping this fuzzy, keeping this in a state of a hang-off complete situation is always to their advantage. And there's no doubt, therefore, what you have seen happening this year and what you've seen happening since 2008, particularly in 2013 with what happened in Depsang. This year, the prevention of our patrols from blocking our patrols from moving towards the patrolling points in the Depsang Plains area. All this is a part of this narrative which they are trying to establish and making the LAC as difficult to determine, as difficult to define at this time. Only in their perception plays to their advantage.
Okay. Mr. Bansal, as General Ata Hasnain is pointing out, and all of us are aware as well that there were several agreements between both sides, which clearly said that both sides should commit to clarification and confirmation of the LAC. But China has been, dragging its feet on that. And those agreements were, some of them were achieved way back in 1990s as well. Why exactly do you think this particular attitude, this should not come as a surprise? In fact, if we look at how China has been dragging its feet on this entire issue for almost a few decades now.
Before I come to your question, I just want to clarify one thing. It is not 1959 perception of LAC. It is the 1959 claim line. Please understand, in 1959, their ground position was much further, much to the east. The whole Spangor Gap was with us in 1959, which they captured in 62. Okay. So it is the 1959 claim line which they are now claiming as LAC. Now, this is important. This we need to understand. Now, having said that, we need to understand that there was a time when it appeared that China had become pragmatic, realized the importance of having good relations with India at a time when the rest of the world was turning against it. And the two countries had agreed to have maintained peace and tranquility along our borders. 1993 agreement accepted that we had differing perceptions of line of actual control, and it actually laid down stipulations as to how the two countries should patrol. But having done that, now what we are seeing is that there is some reason there is an aggravation of mood because at a time when China is getting isolated globally, Chinese aggressiveness shows that they probably feel that they have some sort of an advantage. though militarily in all the three sectors, they are in no position. In fact, I have no doubts that tactically we are in a fairly good position and our military is in a position to give them a befitting reply. But probably they feel because their economy is bigger and they have managed to control COVID pandemic much faster and in a much better way, they probably feel they have certain advantages. But I think I still feel that it is not in any country's interest to go for a conflict or a war. So probably it's a game of brinkmanship which China is resorting to. And I think we must hold ground, firm ground, and then negotiate with them without in any way yielding from our traditional positions. And I think this blow hot, blow cold strategy will continue from China.
Okay.
The global community has by and large been supportive of us. Probably they feel that in light of US elections taking place, US intervention in this part will be limited. They feel US support will be a little muted. That could be one of the issues that could probably take place. Japan has got a new government, new prime minister. Probably they somehow feel that the international environment has turned more conducive to this sort of an aggression. And that's why we are seeing this sort of a thing. And I hope we continue to hold ground and negotiate with them. I think negotiations must never cease. Irrespective of what they claim, what is our claim, we should continue negotiating because conflict is not in anybody's interest.
Okay. But before I go to Ambassador Gupta, one more point here, Mr. Bansal, you're saying negotiations must continue, and obviously India's viewpoint has been the same as well. But it becomes really difficult to continue the negotiations in an atmosphere where the other side is continuously changing its stance.
I have no doubts that it becomes difficult. And in fact, as I know, those who have been negotiating with China know that this has been their old strategy, shifting goalposts, shifting strategies. But diplomacy is the art of possibilities. Diplomacy is the art of finding options. And I'm sure the very fact that you keep negotiating, you will probably find some options. In fact, we should be in a position to pin them out because they are aware of what happened in various negotiations. And if we have to go by Chinese claim lines, then there are various letters which Chow Enlai wrote and which have been there. If we have to go by historical narratives, so we can actually highlight to Chinese in any negotiations that you are the ones who have been actually shifting goalposts. You are the ones who had said we have been wanting to exchange the maps of line of actual control. They are the ones who have been reluctant to show it for so many years. And now they come up with a claim saying that we are actually looking at 1959 claim line, which is actually just unacceptable. India has never accepted that. And I think while holding our position firm, we should keep negotiating if they are willing to negotiate.
Okay. And Mr. Gupta, would you agree there that China seemingly is just utilizing their, this claim over the untenable claim over the 1959 LAC as just a pressure tactic and, ultimately the way forward is to push through with the negotiations?
Vishal, I will like to also add the political perspective because in a sense, where the LAC actually lies is a matter of secondary importance. If you study the border agreements that China has worked out with other countries, the more important aspect has always been political. And in our case, I think the political issues are that China would like India to accept their superior status in this region. And secondly, they would like India not to get too close to the Americans. China had been hoping in all these summit-level talks that we have had in the past, that India will not get too close to the US. And they seem to think that we have not sort of respected that. But again, here the issue is that our understanding and our perception of this differs very much from what Chinese think. We think that we are absolutely sovereign and independent in deciding our own policies. Our policies and our relationships with other countries can't be dictated by Beijing. So that is one aspect.
Okay.
Secondly, discussions on the LAC and discussions on boundary settlement with China are going to be difficult. They are going to be long. But I think of the 5 points that the two foreign ministers discussed, on their September 10th meeting in Moscow, I think that they have made some progress in at least two of them. Now the distance between the troops of the both sides in some areas, I think General Saab can correct me. I think the distance, they had earlier come too close to each other. I heard that at some places they were just 200 meters close to each other. I think that has sort of improved a bit. And I think both sides have not added more troops, which the two foreign ministers had agreed. So I think that at least on those two areas, there is some improvement, there is some understanding. But again, on the larger issues, we continue to have differences, and we cannot accede to what China wants from us in terms of our relationship with USA or Japan or Australia or other countries. And I think Prime Minister hinted this in his address to the UN as well, that our relations with one country are not aimed at another country. So I think those issues, those differences are there. But again, I think the Chinese are miscalculating, and the Chinese think that the way they have been able to subjugate countries in the South China Sea, for instance, or in relation to Taiwan, they will be able to do the same thing vis-a-vis India. But that's not going to happen. They have very strong military and very strong armed forces, and they have given a good fight to the Chinese, both at Galwan Valley as well as Pongmong, so in recent.
Okay, but one more question here, Ambassador Gupta, and the same one which I asked Mr. Bansal as well, since we're talking about how to deal with this situation, and perhaps the best way is to go further ahead with the negotiations. But in that case, as I was asking Mr. Bansal, negotiating with a party which keeps on changing its stand, at every possible opportunity makes it really difficult.
Look, I think, first of all, we have to accept that we are not going to conclude these negotiations anytime soon. Secondly, we have to accept that the situation on the borders is going to remain more or less what it is, barring some minor sort of changes, as I just mentioned. And Chinese are still exercising it, and I read that they are using their land forces, they are using their air power, they are using their special forces, particularly on the electronics warfare side and so on. And so Chinese are continuing to build up. They are continuing to sort of improve their capability in a manner to show to us that we will have to pay a certain price, a certain cost of taking the hard line that we have, or taking a certain line that we have taken. So I think this is going to take time, and we should be patient, and we should be prepared to sort of rough it out.
Okay.
And the negotiations are going to be time-consuming.
Okay, definitely. Negotiations are going to be time-consuming, given the fact that the other party seemingly is changing its tracks every now and then. Let me bring in General Hasnain once again. General Hasnain, one more viewpoint of this entire situation is that the reason why China is once again resorting to these untenable claims, trying to, put pressure on India, is because of the fact that it could not outwit our, troops on the ground, one, and now our troops are strategically in a much better position than theirs.
See, Vishal, it is quite clear that the Chinese, when they brought their additional troops to the LAC after the exercise which was being conducted in April, that exercise was definitely notified and informed to the Indian Army too. But bringing in 30,000, 35,000 troops all of a sudden was not necessarily, in my perception, to capture any territory in depth or to resolve the Ladakh-based LAC issue. It was primarily to coerce us and send home a strategic message to India. Primarily to tell us that we are a weaker state, that we cannot compete against China. And this was being done against a range of other states like Taiwan, Vietnam, Malaysia, Australia economically to an extent. I mean, everywhere in the Southeast Asian region, the attempt was being made to create the situation. Should the United States decide to shift focus into the Indo-Pacific region, then it should be awaiting a situation in which there is a kind of a situation of chaos out here. This is what was the larger picture which the Chinese were attempting to do. What they didn't realize was, as you very correctly say, that the kind of resistance, the kind of professionalism they came across from the Indian army in Ladakh, and subsequently the build-up which has taken place in less than 8 weeks, and then the capability to stick out the winter. It's not an easy thing on our side to build up the logistics for this, but India has done it. Now the Chinese have very little options at the moment, because they can't go beyond that, and they were looking for an exit strategy which was not easily available to them. Now it is very clear that they are looking for elongation of the situation, negotiations to continue, and that is why these preposterous claims are being brought in. This issue is not going to be resolved in the corps commander level talks. The corps commander level talks are primarily about diffusing the situation on the LAC. The larger issue is diplomatic, and obviously it has to be at the diplomatic level, where it will take some very hard bargaining. And as Ambassador Gupta very correctly says, this is not going to happen in 6 months to 1 year or something like that. It's been happening since 1993, and this is what we can expect to continue.
Okay, but since you also agree that diplomatically a solution will have to be found, and all three of you are saying that obviously it's going to take time. We know the kind of history of dialogue which we have had with China, and it is not easy to go ahead and find a solution. In that very period, General Atta Hasnain, strategically, what needs to be done? Because this is a longer period. This is also a very tough terrain. We've shown the Chinese, our forces, our troops have shown the Chinese that yes, we have the wherewithal and the resources and the willpower as well. But from here onwards, for that longer period, strategically, what needs to be done?
See, Vishal, it is very clear strategically there should be no back down. That is the very, very important issue. This whole game is about brinkmanship, as what Alok Bansal Sahab had also said. This is about brinkmanship. The moment you display an element of weakness in your strategy, he is going to pounce on you and take advantage of it. It's a very good thing that we sought our opportunities, and the night 29th, 30th August carried out the tactical actions, which turned out to be more than strategic actually. They were tactical actions which ultimately became strategic actions. Now, these are the kind of opportunities we should be looking for to make sure that we keep him under pressure. He should not keep us under pressure. There are a number of friction points all along. It should not happen that at 5 friction points he's keeping us under pressure, and at 1 friction point we are keeping him under pressure. It should be more than a balance. That balance should be completely in our favor. And winter is not a period in which activities come to an end. We have stayed in Siachen. I have myself served and commanded my unit in Siachen, and I've been in eastern Ladakh. So I know that it is possible to conduct operations, maybe not very large campaign-like operations, but operations can be conducted. And therefore, we should be all the time ready, because the Chinese are known to say something and do something completely different.
Okay, there it is. Thank you so much, General Atta Hasnain, Mr. Alok Bansal, as well as Mr. Yogesh Gupta, for sharing your views and time on this important aspect. As our panelists are pointing out, India will have to be on its guard as far as the situation on the LAC is concerned, and the untenable claims made by China on the LAC are definitely aimed at brinkmanship, ensuring, or rather born out of frustration that they could not outwit the Indian troops there on the ground. We'll come back again. We'll keep an eye on these developments as well. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television. Thank you.